Hello friends, this is Luke, the director of the yoga school. We're going to be talking about Module 2 in the training. So unlike Module 1, which is primarily intellectual and theoretical, Module 2 becomes very applied, and there's a lot of asana and practicum. As far as the study materials, the elephant in the room that's not Ganesha is, of course, that we have to handle anatomy. So we do our anatomy course during Module 2. We talk about injuries a significant amount, just because they're very, very common. They're more common than what people want to acknowledge or maybe admit. And so we definitely confront that large concern. We look into, of course, asana in general, as far as applicable teaching. Most people teach asana predominantly, and so asana kind of becomes just a major theme from this point forward in the training. We look at props. I've got myself a nice wedge. We look at props such as blocks. We could look at mats. We look at folding chairs. And of course, we can thank BKS Iyengar for giving us a nice plethora of props to look at. Within the context of our training, we kind of look at the basic ones: blankets, straps, wedges, blocks, chairs, bolsters, and so forth. So we do look at props quite a bit as an overview. We discuss pranayama in a very simple way. So we start with the first pranayama, which is Ujjayi. So in the Krishnamacharya lineage, both Iyengar and Pattabhi Jois teach Ujjayi as the first pranayama. So we go into that. In Module 2, Surya Namaskara, of course, is a vinyasa sequence, asana and pranayama together. And so that's essentially the first sequence of postures that we look at. We go into the vayus, and even though there are several vayus, at this point in the training we're going to look specifically at pranavayu and apanavayu. We're going to harken back to Module 1 and the information that we learned there about the centripetal and centrifugal tendencies and how they come into play in Vinyasa Yoga in terms of the centrifugal aspect, the expansive aspect of the pranic expanse, the yin or Shiva, the centrifugal aspect of our breath as it expands and opens, and as our bodies move in conjunction with that force and sort of unify with that force. And then of course the apanic centripetal force, the cohesion, brings things together, sustains, represented by the deity Vishnu. Of course, the exhalation, the apanic, downward, yang, centripetal tendency of apanavayu. So pranavayu and apanavayu become very big themes towards the end of Module 2, and we'll use vinyasas, particularly Surya Namaskara, and getting into some of the primary postures. Exploring that. I say primary from the Krishnamacharya lineage. We'll look at chakras a little bit, but not as much. We'll look into the standing postures, so we'll start going through those, starting with Padangusthasana, Padahastasana, Uttita Trikonasana. We'll learn each one at a time in a basic way. Most of the time, when we start with one asana, you'll have a schedule and you'll say, okay, today we're going to be looking at Trikonasana. Some asanas, especially in the beginning, they're big. Trikonasana, for example, might take 2 or 3 class sessions. We might not go into Trikonasana and do it all at once though, because sometimes we learn Trikonasana, about a month later we can come back to it depending on the structure of the training. But let's say in Module 4, we can come back to Trikonasana with other knowledge that can sort of build our knowledge of Trikonasana. So when we go into one asana, we might not do the entire lesson plan of that asana on that day, but it's essentially going to be an overview of that asana And then as we gain more knowledge about anatomy and everything in the training, it'll just kind of build upon it. So I don't want you to think that it's like one asana, then another one, then another one, and another one. It is, and it looks that way on the syllabus, but in fact, it is, we are looking at all of the asanas as a whole, and we are kind of looking more at alignment and basic structure of an asana on a particular day. We'll talk about basics of sequencing at this time, and then of course, a wonderful exam number 2. That is the overview of Module 2, which I would describe as sort of exciting. It tends to be a lot of fun. It's also a time for those of you that don't have a really well-rooted, established practice to be very cautious. And that's another reason why anatomy is in this module. You really want to be careful. I've seen quite a few injuries in the training during Module 2 and when people don't have much of a practice and then boom, they got all this stuff that they're doing. You want to be really, really careful. Take care of your body through this section.